Hey guys, Indiana Smith here, and this is my 7th grade Texas history class, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Come on guys, find a seat on the floor here. All right, I brought you here today because in a couple of weeks we're going to be going on our field trip up to the Sulphur River, and I wanted to tell you about the best Sulphur River field trip ever. It was 21 years ago in 1997 that I went up with my then 7th grade class. They were the graduating class of the year 2003. And that particular year, we'd had a very dry summer, very dry fall, not wet like this one. And the thing about the river is normally when it's been dry for a long time, you just don't find much. And we'd have one rain. The river had come up just that much. And that little rain had been just enough to scour it clean in the channels. It hadn't even gotten over the gravel bars. The gravel bars were all covered with mud and weeds, and we were finding nothing. And all at once, I was crossing a stream. I'd picked up a little black snail, a little gastropod. We'll probably find some of those when we go to the river. And I saw this in the stream. Now, all the kids had walked by it. No one had recognized it for what it was. In fact, one boy said he saw it and thought it was tree roots. I knew what it was the minute I saw it. This was the top of the skull upside down with the teeth up, and then these were the two lower jaws, and they were still embedded in the clay, which meant that all the teeth were still there. So I started jumping up and down and screaming and throwing my hat in the air and doing my little happy dance, because this was the first and only complete skull I've ever found. I have found one partial Mosasaur skeleton before then. I've found 4 more since then, but you rarely see a skull this complete. And so I called all the kids over and they checked it out, and we posed for a picture, which you can see right here in this very old newspaper clipping. That ran in the paper the next day, but that was all of us standing there pointing at the find. So I sent the kids on back to the school, except one boy, his father was gonna come back and bring me the equipment I needed, so Dalton stayed with me and helped. And so what we began to do, the skull was in about 6 inches of water. That's why this looks kind of washed out in the picture, is because it's actually lying in about 6 inches of shallow water. And so I sat in the water and began digging out around, and this is after I'd uncovered most of it. And here you can see the entire top of the skull and the 2 lower jaws side by side. Many of the teeth from the top of the skull were actually gone, but the ones in the jaws on either side were nearly all complete. Now the thing had fracture lines running all the way through it, so what I got, Mr. Notarer said, "What do you need?" I said 3 things: toilet paper, big package of Charmin, heavy duty foil, and a laundry basket. He was like, "What?" But anyway, so what I did was I got the toilet paper and wrapped, as I lifted it out one section at a time, I got the toilet paper wet and wrapped it up. And of course, toilet paper, as it dries, will form to that and pad it and keep it from breaking. And then I would take 2 or 3 pieces, because you can't do plaster underwater. And then I get 2 or 3 pieces at a time and wrap them in foil and stack them in the laundry basket, and piece by piece by piece, we hauled the whole skull out of there. We finally got the whole thing loaded into the laundry basket. About 6 o'clock that evening, me and Mr. Notarer came out of the river carrying it in between us. And the next question was what to do with it. I sat down with Mr. Slater the next day, and you understand this is a pretty valuable find, okay? It was probably, even in 1997, worth $10,000 or $15,000. I said we could sell it. But the thing is, in a school this size, you spend that money in a week and it's gone. You know, you don't really have, I mean, you might have something to show for it, but there's nothing to remember such a remarkable moment. I said we could also donate it to a museum and it might get exhibited with a placard with our name on it. I said, personally, what I recommend is having the skull reassembled and restored and mounting it up right here at GCS. We'll be the only school in Texas with our very own dinosaur skull. And Mr. Slater, now first of all, very generous. He said, as far as I'm concerned, it's yours. If you want to sell it, you want to keep it, do what you want with it. And I said, no, I found it on the school's clock. I would feel guilty keeping it. And so he took my recommendation, and a friend of mine named David Wolf did the initial restoration, which you see here. And it was April before he was done with it. And he delivered it looking a little bit different than it does now. This was the first complete Clidastes skull he had ever reassembled, so he got a few things wrong. But anyway, that's the original fossil. And by the way, what you see right here is actually a polyurethane cast of the original fossil. Over here, these are the actual bones. Now, a number of years later, a paleontologist friend of mine named Mike Polson, who works for SMU, he said that, he had seen my photographs of this. He said, that's the largest Clidastes skull I've ever seen from Texas. He said, it's also one of the absolute most complete. He said, I would like to take it over to the paleontology lab and do an MRI scan of it and load it into our data bank so we have it as a reference. So I talked to Mr. Bowers in the school board, and he said, I would also like to make a cast for you so that it is, he said, mounting up the original fossil like that put stress on the bones. It could crack while being moved. You could damage the fossil. So he created this cradle mount, which is just kind of a rough plaster cradle that holds the original bones kind of in the same position they were when I found them. And then this is the cast that he created. He actually had to recreate a few small missing parts of the skull, but this shows the entire skull assembled, what it would have looked like. Any questions? Whoa. Okay, one at a time. Well, guys, thanks for joining us today. Look forward to seeing the next episode. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, and go on over to Amazon and check out my books. Have a great day.